What up, homeboys? It's been a while since we visited the DPS and how they are doing, and there has been a lot of very big buffs for a lot of classes. You're gonna see the top one. It will shock you. Haha, haha. Welcome to BuzzFeed. No, for real. We're gonna talk about how the specs are doing, how they are ranking the DPS wise, and utility. We're gonna consider that too. Okay, there's a lot of specs that are not very good in numbers, but they are useful. So yeah, let's go over it. First of all, we got the rogue. There is two specs viable right now: assassination and combat. They are doing about the same. I am not a rogue expert, I never play the rogue, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. But number-wise, because here's the problem with the rogue, they do not have any real useful utility. Kicks, maybe that's it. So rogues are pretty darn useless in this tier, aside from the damage, and their damage is pretty mediocre. They are middle of the road. So normally for their damage I would put them on A, but since they have nothing that makes them particularly useful, I'm gonna put them on B. They are just a lousy middle power in this tier. So yeah, probably not gonna put rogues in my raid anymore. The Arcane Mage. Now the Arcane Mage, people always hate on it. The Arcane Mage, I like it in my raids a lot because he can off-heal when we are like struggling in a raid or something. If I'm doing a pug and I take an Arcane Mage, we are struggling on Menagerie because that's a fight where like there's a lot of healing needed. I can just ask the Arcane Healer to just take regeneration and like off-heal while he DPSs. But the DPS itself is pretty good actually, about on par with the rogue. Of course the mage has buffs, the mage has intellect buff, the mage has frost nova, the mage can use cone of cold. It helps us a lot with the trash, okay? Mages are very efficient on trash. So a mage, even if it's arcane, it will speed up your clears a lot, and that's really good. So I'm gonna put it on A. I would happily take an arcane mage. Next is gonna be the Boomkin, okay? The Boomkin, what does it bring to the table? Of course, Mark of the Wild, and it also brings the 3% crit for the casters. That's not nothing, okay? Because all the best casters in the game right now, they are like, they love crit, so that matters. The Boomkin itself though is doing about as much damage as an Arcane Mage, definitely better than a Rogue, and they are ranged, okay, that's the other thing. The Rogue is melee, so it sucks for the last two fights, but a ranged like the Boomkin can kill the ship, a ranged like the Boomkin can click on the buttons, and also now the Boomkin can innervate and throw off heals with Fury of Storm Rage when it procs without shape-shifting, so they are a very effective off-healer and utility support overall. So we're gonna put them also on A. Another thing about the Boomkin is they can handle the bombs, okay? Usually you have a Metamorphosis Warlock because it is more reliable, but for the most part you can have a Boomkin with a Moonfire. If he has a lot of gear, he can one-shot the bombs too. So they are very useful in the last fight. Now, Elemental Shaman. The Elemental Shaman provides a lot of utility. They got the totems, of course. Disease Cleansing Totem is so underrated in this tier, even though it's one of the most busted things in the game. Overall, the damage is very high tier. I would say it is like in the higher parts of A tier. If you look at the numbers, they are like very up there. But overall, the Elemental Shaman AoE is decent. They got very good clip damage. They got very good single target damage. And they have excellent utility. You cannot go wrong with an Elemental Shaman. We're gonna put it on S. Now the Enhancement Shaman. Of course, we're gonna talk about the DPS one here, not the tank one. As you guys know, the Enhancement Shaman was a middle power itself, like about here in this tier. And then it got a buff. Every time they put Alpha, the rune of Alpha, on somebody else, they get 20% extra attack power. I don't know how the hell that got into the game. But yeah, so they got 20% more damage, almost, not quite. And that brought them all the way from here to here. They are the best DPSer in the game right now, if you can hold aggro. God help you hold aggro against this guy. But if you can hold aggro against this guy, they are the best DPSer in the game. I am not kidding about the threat problems. I am a warrior and I gotta intervene the enhancement in my raid all the time to keep him in check. Then we got the Feral Druid, okay? The Feral Druid provides Wind Fury, very important, just like the Shaman. And it provides Micro the Wild, and ideally, if they spec for it, I see a lot of people making them go this. A leader of the pack is an attack power for the rest of the group. So if you are like, I don't know, Alan though, if you're like a warrior or a rogue or whatever that wants to actually parse at the top of the world, you need a Feral Druid in your raid. You need it 100% of the time. This buff leader of the pack is so good that people are taking bears even though they suck just to get it. Okay, so yeah, the DPS is fine. It's not great, it's not bad, but I would say they are A tier just because they are useful. Even if I know I probably wouldn't take one because my guilds I don't really parse Now we got the Fire Mage. Okay, the Fire Mage is still the best caster in the game. They are right stepping on the toes of the Enhancement Shaman, but they are really up there, and they are gonna remain up there because they scale, so they are only getting better. And the Fire Mage, excellent AoE, excellent cleaving with Living Bomb, and excellent single target also with Living Bomb. Okay, the Fire Mage cannot do anything wrong, and they have the same utility as an Arcane Mage. So you can stack like 3 mages. Sometimes I get 3 fire mages in a raid and it works perfect because they are so good. If you got a raid and you got like 9 spots and you don't know what to take to fill it up, take a fire mage every time. Frost, big meme, absolutely useless, nothing more to say here. Their DPS sucks and they got nothing really important or useful, so yeah, we're gonna drop them right here. The Hunter, okay, the Hunter has 2 specs, range and melee. Of course, we do not talk about range. Range is the second worst spec in the game, it'll be right here. But melee though, melee is still after the nerf, about in par with the Elemental Shaman in damage, okay? They got a 10% nerf on their damage. They used to be at the top. Now they are on the low end or the high end of A tier, maybe, let's say. Yeah, they are about here. They are doing very good damage. They are perfectly fine. People complain too much. They are best. They are great, okay? It's fine. Now the DPS warrior, it actually took off a little from the last time we visited it. The warrior was also a middle power like the rogue, but over time the warrior got a lot better with gear and so on and so forth. And Fury is also viable now, so you got that going on for you. I would say I'm gonna put it on very high B tier, just cause. The red paladin, on the other hand, ever since it got that buff that it makes, I think it was their Crusader Strike. Their Crusader Strike can skip armor, it does holy damage now. And that means that the Retribution Paladin is doing excellent damage. As you guys know, the problem with the warrior in this phase is that the bosses had a lot of armor and they couldn't generate rage or do good damage because of all that armor. But since the Paladin is now ignoring armor, it is about here. It is doing excellent damage. And also the blessings, of course. You can never have too many Paladins, okay? Like Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Might, Blessing of Kings, Blessing of Salvation. They are all so important. You can have like 3 paladins until you got like way too many, so it's pretty good. The Shadow Priest, okay, the Shadow Priest has Homunculi, that's an armor reduction ability, so that's very crucial, and it is doing very good damage. I'm gonna put it on the low end of S tier, but the Shadow Priest, very good, we're gonna keep it. And of course the Warlock, okay? The Warlock is the last one. The Warlock is a must-have in any raid in Gnomeregan. As you guys know, you need a Metamorphosis Warlock, unless you got a very geared Boomkin like I said. You need a Metamorphosis Warlock to take care of the mechanics of the last fight in general. Aside from that, the Warlock now with Lake of Fire is a very decent AoE. It used to have a terrible AoE, now it's pretty good. And they also got the courses, of course, Course of Weakness, Course of Recklessness, that's to help the warriors a little bit. All those courses are very useful for the whole raid. Overall, you gotta get a Warlock, man. Like, why wouldn't you get a Warlock? It's so important for all the utility they provide. And they are about the third right behind the Fire Mage, more or less, maybe behind the Shadow Priest a little, but no, they are the third. They are the third best DPSer in the game, guys. So I see a lot of Warlocks complaining that the Fire Mage is stealing the Thunder, but come on, man. Like, you're all the way up there. Can you really complain at this point, brother? But okay, here is gonna be the tier list for the phase. I think it got a little more balanced than before. There is a lot more viable specs than there used to be now that they buffed a bunch of classes. Range, Hunter, Resting Pepperonis. I hope they buff it, but they won't. Overall though, I guess this is probably the most balanced it's ever been at this point, so we got that going on. I wish tanking got this balance. Subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.